From the outset, let me say that I don't give a damn about pop culture. I give zero damns about it. You saw all the whining and trouble and rancor that occurred merely because I pointed out that there was something wrong with Marvel pushing the idea of black people in grass skirts and plate lips in what's supposed to be an advanced African society. We actually had a damn near civil war here because of a comic book movie created by a white corporation, and one in particular named after a man who hated black people. But it happened. See, black people will go to war over their white media entertainment, and it ain't just comic book movies. Black people are thoroughly invested in what the white media puts out there. Black people have become infantilized, particularly about the media that we consume. I guess it's because we have no real power in the real world, so most of us have been reduced to trying to brag about childish power, juvenile power, worthless power, power that doesn't mean anything. In other words, we're so weak and lacking in maturity and intelligence that the only power we're interested in isn't power at all. And this is the saddest commentary about our people. We are in a life and death struggle right now, one that we're currently losing if you need to be reminded, caught in a three-way pincer movement by three ruthless groups, each one fighting to see who'll get the credit for wiping us out. And yet, looking at the way that most black people behave, the way that most black people are focused and what we're focused on, you would not know that a blatant genocide was taking place and that we were the targets of that genocide. We are hollow people with nothing to offer and no way to acquire anything meaningful, so we're reduced to focusing on crotch power. After all, you were born with your crotch. You didn't have to do anything to earn it, and short of castration, for the men anyway, no one can take it away from you. And a lack of the knowledge of how to acquire or use resources means that we are forever children, never taking on adult responsibilities, which is what mastering the Earth's resources is all about. That's what we're supposed to be focusing on. But you see, power, real power, is hard. Being immature is easy, so we choose the latter. Now, you need to know that this is what I think when someone asks me to comment on TV shows or to comment on movies. And for the last probably couple of weeks, every once in a while, I'm not going to lie and say that I've been just showered with, but every once in a while, some unthinking clod will stumble their way into my comment section and ask me, what do I think about that guy? I think his name is Demario Jackson. Don't correct me because I don't give a damn if I get it right or wrong. You may care about TV, I don't. But whoever the guy is on Bachelor in Paradise and that whole fiasco, well, actually, it's not a fiasco at all. It's just white supremacy sticking to the script. Well, here's my answer. I don't watch TV, and stuff like this is the reason why I don't watch it. You'd think I give a damn about the misadventures of some idiot who decided that he was going to go chasing after some trailer trash Tracy? I didn't even know that this show existed until the last month or so. Other than the literally 1 or 2 articles that I read about this guy's little misadventure, I still don't know what the show was supposed to be about, and truth be told, I don't give a damn. Though I'll bet that there's a lot of you, probably a majority of you, who can recite chapter and verse what that show's about. I mean, given how shamelessly so many of my subscribers went along with Marvel's little Black Panther blackface show, I have no doubt that there's a lot of you who slavishly watch Disney's other outlet, ABC, and see what the hell they're pumping out. Now, you are fair to ask, why did I comment on the Black Bachelorette then? Well, first of all, I did one video essay, not a series, and secondly, I pointed out the effery that was going to be in full effect, and from the very first episode, in fact, before the first episode had aired, the pale males were proving me right. I use the Black Bachelorette as a social commentary. I haven't watched the show, don't give a damn what's going on with it, and I encourage you to do the same. But my question is, how many of you were looking and going, okay, we won't watch this black woman who is bootlicking and bedwenching, but we'll go find some other bedwench to watch? Also, I told you that that show was all about mind control. How many times have I had to tell you that? The white men who own the media, they don't see themselves as being in the business of entertainment. They see themselves as being in the business of mind control. And that show was to be a dramatization of the black kept woman fantasy that Shonda Rhimes has made so much money off of, and is supposed to cater to black women's desire to be wanted by white men, because whether you want to admit it or not, that desire is there for a lot of you, not all of you, but damn sure enough. And sisters, there's more than a few of you who have been taking open glee at Demario Jackson being dragged by the white media. Now, whether you approve of his choice in women or not, and there's clearly no accounting for taste, unless he's done something against the community per se, why are you so heavily invested in cheering on the white media while they demonize this guy? It's one thing to say, well, we're not going to feel sorry for him, or we're going to wash our hands of him, but that's not what's been happening here. You've been having a lot of black women who have been getting their jollies, just unbridled glee, from seeing this guy getting dragged. And looking at the happiness that a lot of black women are having, that speaks to something else. You see, when Lee Garrett decided to throw his racist remarks, and Lindsay was getting embarrassed by it, there were a lot of things that I did, but do you notice how I didn't come out and say, well, you know, I'm happy about this. Yeah, that's what you get. I didn't take glee in it. Understand something. The attention that black women have given to this whole Bachelor in Paradise incident, that's been a large part of what's fueled it throughout the news cycles. Not all of it, but a large part of it. Okay, so if we can all agree that this Demario Jackson character put himself into a trick bag, you are fair to ask, why am I not jumping on the bandwagon to attack him? First of all, the damn thing is already full and overflowing. There's no room on the bandwagon. Whenever a black man steps wrong, there never is room on the bandwagon. Whenever a black man steps wrong, you cannot find 1 square inch of the bandwagon that's not already occupied. It's not standing room only. It's you got chains and ropes hanging off the back of the bandwagon with people fighting to see who can hang on to those. Let's be honest here. There is a certain amount of consideration that gets given to black women who step wrong publicly that is never given to black men. And yet there seems to be this contingent of black females who demand that I go in as if nobody else is going in on Demario Jackson, as if nobody else has been saying a word about him. So let me get this straight. Lindsay allows herself to be insulted by some redneck scumbag, doesn't do anything about it, and you get angry that I point this out. Meanwhile, Demario Jackson is getting dragged by everyone from the head of ABC to the freaking Pope. There's nobody who hasn't taken their pot shots at Demario Jackson, and you got the nerve to bitch and whine like a 3-year-old who didn't get a cookie because I don't join in? So let me get this straight. You got millions of people going in on this guy, and you're going, but it's not good until Professor Truth gets in there too. I'll tell you something. I went in on Lee Daniels, Terry Crews, and even when I take up for Bill Cosby, I don't do it without criticizing him as well. Gee, I don't see anyone asking for equal time there. The white media is largely a safe space for white males, but quiet as it's kept, it also seems to be a safe space for the most part for black women too, in that you can go days without seeing the white media saying anything you don't like regarding any black woman at all. Meanwhile, you can barely get through an entire news segment without them throwing some open shade at a black man. And I guess this immunity from white media scrutiny has conditioned a lot of black women to think that there's never supposed to be any criticism at all from anyone ever. There have been those who apparently believe that black community means that only black men are supposed to get criticized. Well, if that's your definition of black community, then you don't know what the hell the words mean. There's little need for me to go in on black men who call themselves chasing after white women because there's already an army of black people, white people, Asians, and anyone else who will do it for me. And also, whenever someone goes in on a black man who chases white women, nobody ever defends him. I damn sure don't do it. I don't tell anybody, well, gee, aren't we being a little hard on Demario Jackson? Aren't we being a little hard on whomever? Black men with white women is not sanctioned, certainly not by the dominant society and definitely not in our community. Now, sure, I could say that this guy is a cautionary tale about black men who call themselves snuggling up with white women, but that doesn't add anything new. See, when the Black Bachelorette got her show, the one-day scandal about Lee Garrett, that wasn't about her. It was about Lee Garrett and his racism. There was no attempt to scandalize Rachel Lindsay at all, even though she was smiling and preening up in Lee Garrett's face afterwards. Sisters, we need to get serious on this point. I mean every word I say when I tell you that more of you than are willing to admit want to get a wink and a nod for making goo-goo eyes at white dudes. And if you want to do that, I suppose that's your business. But the excuses and rationales have been coming nonstop. What about black athletes? What about black actors? What about black men who make more than 50 grand a year? None of these talking points is true, generally speaking, by the way. By and large, black male actors, male athletes, male entertainers, they tend to overwhelmingly marry black women. But rather than celebrate this reality, instead you overlook it, and I gotta ask, why is that? Why would you want to overlook something that is exactly what you claim you want? I, for one, am not in favor of interracial anything. I have never endorsed black men with white women and damn sure ain't gonna start now. And you know what? Neither has the dominant society. But they do, however, endorse black women being the kept women of white men. You had made-for-TV movies about Thomas Jefferson raping Sally Hemings. You got that big-budget movie Loving. I mean, anytime you got a white man who's with a black woman, well, as long as she's going ahead and being his docile bedmate, then it's all good. The dominant society has no problem putting out depictions of white men with black women, just so long as it's in the proper context. There were a lot of reactions after Lee Garrett was exposed for his racist remarks. Black women had a lot to say, and a former Bachelorette contestant, by the way, Leah Block, a white woman, was also caught making racist remarks about Rachel Lindsay, saying that she goes, a friend of mine came in while the Black Bachelorette was on and asked, is this love and hip hop? I noticed that the white media didn't drag Leah Block for that, and I noticed a lot of black women didn't either. Now, why is it that the reaction was muted here? All of these reactions from our community, the one that seemed to be missing was, well, Rachel Lindsay deserves what she's getting for drooling over white men. Nobody was sitting there taking glee in her being insulted or in her being humiliated by these white people. Nobody was getting happy about it. Now, why was there not any glee about that? Because you're getting happy about Demario Jackson. So why is it that it's not a two-way street? You have this proud, strong, independent black woman, all those superlatives got heaped on her. And she only just sent Lee Garrett home this last episode, by the way. Meanwhile, if there were any other black men on the show, they got sent home a long time ago. So his racism didn't seem to bother her at all. Now, just out of curiosity, where is the outrage? Why have I not seen the occasional comment or posting saying, gee, aren't you going to follow up on Rachel Lindsay and point out how she still has that white racist on the show? Where are the black women saying that she deserved it? We don't have a case of a guy who broke bad on her. This was a chump who came in the door wearing his racism as a badge of honor, and she liked it. She smiled in his face, couldn't help joking with the guy. She liked this guy. Now, you see, that's the reason why you don't see me making any big deal about Demario Jackson, not even as a social commentary. Demario Jackson himself was the target. He was the target. It wasn't the white woman who, as we now know, erroneously accused him, and no one's giving him any sympathy, nor should they. After 500 years, a black man ought to know that every white woman will gladly smile in your face, grind her bony ass against you, ask you to buy her drinks, and then turn right around and accuse you of rape, or whatever else she can, when she's had a chance to think about how all of her white pals and family have seen her play the slut for a black man. We know the script. I can't have any sympathy for Demario Jackson because of the fact that we're not children here. We are fighting a war, or rather we're caught in a war zone. We're not really fighting anything. And if he wants to decide that he's going to go tripping through the tulips like it's a freaking playground, fine. He wouldn't be the first casualty who decided to be stupid and paid a fool's price. You see, when a white woman goes off code and gets caught drooling over a black man, they know the dominant society, particularly white men, need to see her scream rape. It's her only way back into their good graces. She lies and says that she was raped by this black man, and they lie and pretend to believe her. What's actually happening is a social compact between that white woman and the dominant society. What she's showing is, whoops, I had a lapse in judgment. Let me show my allegiance by deciding to help you lynch this black man. Now, according to ABC, they've already admitted now that, well, okay, guess there was nothing to this accusation against Demario Jackson. But we are going to review our policies and procedures regarding behavior on the set of the show. Gee, nothing happened, but you're going to review your policies and procedures anyway. You see, this is the TV media equivalent of writing new laws. They couldn't get Bill Cosby, so what they did is they're like, let's write some new laws. We can get the next nigger. They couldn't get Demario Jackson, so now they're going to review their policies and procedures. That way, next time, the bar will be much lower. They can go ahead and have that Negro thrown off the show or otherwise be able to finish the lynching of him. You know how it is with the dominant society. Half a lynching just won't do. But apparently, no one's going to be reviewing anything regarding white people's social media behavior, especially if it's of an anti-black nature. But then again, why should they? Rachel Lindsay, the black bachelorette, was all smiles and giggles in the face of Lee Garrett, a white man who posted all kinds of vile stuff online about black people. And what kind of message does her preening and smiling in his face send? At present, Demario Jackson is no longer being accused of doing anything wrong, but doesn't it make sense that if he didn't do anything wrong, then his accuser did? So we're going to see this white woman get kicked off the show for making an erroneous complaint, right? Nah, she's white. ABC has nothing to say about her. Because you see, this all wasn't meant to defame her at all. If she had been accused of doing something wrong, like Lee Garrett, it would be a one-and-done story. Moving right along, nothing to see here. She says she's sorry, nothing to see here. Ain't that what they did for Leah Block? That wasn't even a one-day story. That was a one-hour story. And for ABC to step back from all of their accusations against Demario Jackson, what that means is that there was some damning evidence that proved that she was lying, and now they're trying to pretty it up. No one's asking any questions at all about her, and they're not going to. The specter of Bill Cosby was definitely in the room on this one. Nothing happens in a vacuum under white supremacy. Now, for those of you out there who want to whine about this Bachelor in Paradise fiasco and, Professor Truth, we love to see you dump on this dude. If you want me to say that Demario Jackson should have known better, well, duh. That kind of goes without saying. Last time I checked, water is still wet, too. Do I need to tell you that one? Perhaps he figured that there were cameras on the set, so if anyone wanted to weaponize their whiteness, it wouldn't be his word against hers, right? That makes him a fool. Doesn't matter if you're on camera or not, because it's white people who control the cameras, and they control the telling of whatever happens in front of the cameras. And while ABC has now admitted that Demario Jackson didn't do anything wrong, that doesn't change the fact that for weeks now they've been insinuating that he had. And the white media and the dominant society have repeated these lies nonstop and amplified them. It's not about Demario's behavior, it's about his skin color. We all get that, but it won't undo the fact that the damage has been done. Demario Jackson's sin, other than playing with trash, is that he allowed himself to forget that we're at war. One that's been going on for hundreds of years. He let the TV cameras give him a false sense of security. I can denounce him, sure, but that reprimand falls right then and there. It rises and falls right there. We all know what the lesson was here for Demario Jackson. My question is, what is the lesson for Rachel Lindsay? While she's played the slut for racists, and has been made to look stupid. The problem is she hasn't been punished for it. Demario Jackson's been terribly punished. See, his lesson came with consequences. What are the consequences for Rachel Lindsay? So that black women look at her and say, ooh, I definitely don't want to wind up like that. Where's the lesson at? Because nobody seems to be learning it. Because there doesn't seem to be a lesson playing itself out. It's like what I told you was the appeal for black women regarding Scandal. The ones who worship that show, they love it because Shonda Rhimes has created a dramatization of their fantasies. And in her world, when you make every wrong choice in life, you get a happy ending. Olivia Pope is never punished for her self-destructive behavior. She never learns from it either, but she doesn't have to. In the end, the married white man leaves his white wife and apparently his white community too, so he can spend the rest of his days with this black woman. Black women get to feel validated by this. See, the white media will gladly sell you fantasies of a black woman who is willing to suck up to a white man. It didn't happen in real life, damn sure didn't happen to any of these black women, but they've spent decades living in their own imaginations, living vicariously through black female pop singers and actresses, so what they see on TV might as well be real to them. Rachel Lindsay hasn't been disgraced, attacked, or defamed. Embarrassed, sure. Made to look stupid, sure. But she hasn't been punished. No one went after her for anything that she said or allegedly did. And no one has denounced her for keeping a card-carrying racist on what's supposed to be her show. You want to know why? Because the women who watch that show are vicariously living out a fantasy. They can overlook the racism from punks like Lee Garrett and Leah Block so long as the guy delivering the abuse has blonde hair, blue eyes, and doesn't necessarily weigh 400 pounds. I'm not one for stating the obvious, okay? I prefer to tell you something you don't know. I want to say something that everyone else isn't already saying. If you want to dump on Demario Jackson, you're not going to get any argument from me. In fact, you won't get any argument from anyone. I've always told you that there's no such thing as proportional consequences. A momentary mistake can cost you your life or follow you the rest of your days. Disney is using ABC to teach a social lesson about black men who call themselves getting too friendly with white women. Demario Jackson's learning a hard lesson. And I can't lie and say that I have sympathy for him, and I can't say that I recommend that you should either. But tell me, does this resoluteness also go for Rachel Lindsay too? For all of you black women out there who demanded that I have some harsh words for Demario Jackson just out of curiosity, are we going to say anything about Rachel Lindsay? Because Demario Jackson is learning his lesson. He's getting dragged and punished. Rachel Lindsay, not so much. Because so far we haven't seen the same level of vitriol for her. The idea that black women can and should take abuse from white men, that's what her little TV dramedy is meant to prove. It's yet another in the endless parade of black women who have to smile while some white guy dishes out the abuse and the racism, and they just smile and laugh about it. There is this persistent subset of black women who have been making all black women look bad because I only hear from them when they think that there's a black man who could be trashed, as if nobody's already doing that. O.J. Simpson, Michael Jackson, Chris Brown, Jay-Z, Bill Cosby, please tell me where the black women are who the dominant society is going all out to either try to put in jail or to publicly demonize. Because I can list for you all day the black men who get dragged and how we are told that we need to cheer this because black women feel as if somehow these black men being punished adds to their stock when it doesn't. Yet there's still some black women who are hypersensitive to any criticism of even one black woman, and they choose to take that as a rallying cry to gender war. Tell me, which should I be devoting my time to? Which one does it make more sense for me to devote time to? Yet another black man who was stupid enough to put himself into a trick bag for a racist white woman? Or a black woman who does not get criticized even though she allows a racist white man to get away with his racism? I attack David Clark because although he gets snubbed by his would-be white benefactors, he never gets punished. Ben Carson is ridiculed, but he hasn't been punished either. Jason Whitlock gets laid off, but he never gets punished. So I have to go in on those clowns because they haven't been made to pay a price for their crimes against the black community. When these guys act stupid, they're not made to pay for it. Demario Jackson, on the other hand, I'm scratching my head and asking, other than against himself, who the hell was his crime against necessarily? He set himself up, and he's paid a hell of a price. And you know what? While I take no pleasure in it, there's no denying the reality that he did it to himself. He stepped into that bear trap. Oh, forget about bear trap. He stepped into a bear trap, a pit with poison, sharpened stakes at the bottom of it, with a freaking gigantic hornet's nest inside, whatever you want to say, a vat of acid. He jumped into that thing head first, with his eyes wide open. I mean, what the hell are you even doing volunteering to be on a show like this in the first place? Now, I don't know anything about this guy. I haven't watched any video of him. I've only seen 1 or 2 photographs of him. But based on what it was that I read, and granted, as I said before, I only read 1 or 2 articles, so if you want to correct me, save it. But based on what I've been able to intuit about this young man, he seems to me to be the kind of unthinking person, the kind of black man who prides himself mostly on whether or not he can charm the ladies, and apparently he can. I guess that's his game and he likes to play it, but when it comes to members of the dominant society, they're not playing the game of let's hook up. Their game is let's set him up. And they get to decide who wins that one, and rest assured it ain't going to be the black guy. At this late date, there's simply no excuse for any black person, certainly not a black man, who is trying to act like he can trust white people from the dominant society, or thinking to himself that he's going to parachute from bed to bed and that there isn't going to be some white person who decides to scream rape. They're on a war footing, and the enemy is us. Demario Jackson is a cautionary tale, full stop, though one that doesn't need to be rehashed or taught necessarily because we already know it. His stupidity won't serve to teach anyone anything because it's not a new lesson. It's just an example of, here's another idiot who went and got himself into a jam that he can't get out of. He won't embolden white people because even white people got to get their pound of flesh from him. This game begins and ends with him. Black men will be once again reminded that chasing white women will get you into trouble that you can't get out of. And white women have been reminded that, just in case you go deciding that you want to go chasing a black anaconda, you get hot in the drawers. For that black mandingo, you better understand. You're going to have to deal with the white men afterwards. This was an exercise in teaching black men you'll be punished if you go calling yourself getting friendly with a white woman, and teaching white women that you better be more concerned about staying in the good graces of the white men who run the society, as opposed to indulging a momentary pleasure that no white man could ever give you. But the damage, such as it is, that Demario Jackson's stupidity has done, to whatever degree you want to say that it's there, and I think that it's not that much damage to our community at all, more to himself. The question is the damage that Rachel Lindsay did, and is still doing. Because while she gets fitted for designer dresses, the same black women who are bitching and whining about Demario Jackson, they're desperately wishing that they could be in her shoes. Even knowing everything that she's been through, how she's been humiliated, and how she has painted targets on the backs of every black woman in America, they still wish that they too had some white men to pretend to fawn over them. The lesson that they seem to take away from Rachel Lindsay is that if you're willing to take some white man's abuse, then some TV network will buy you some fancy dresses and give you a free meal or two at a good restaurant. But what's the lesson that the white males take away from Rachel Lindsay and her gleeful, smiling, laughing acceptance of abuse from a racist white man? They see a black woman who smiles and laughs while a white man attacks black people. She didn't tell ABC that she refused to go on the air until Lee Garrett was dismissed. And even then, she had the power to dismiss him on general principle, just arbitrarily. She could say the very first broadcast, you know what? There were some other guys whose behavior I didn't like, but this Lee Garrett, you're some unfinished business. You gotta go first. She couldn't bring herself to do that either. she just continued to laugh and kid and play with the rabid racist. And he never apologized for his behavior, never made amends, quite the opposite. He was every bit as arrogant and hostile as he'd been from the jump. See, the white guys, they see white women like Leah Block essentially call Rachel Lindsay ghetto, and she doesn't seem to be too bothered by it. Oh, sure, she had a couple of interesting words for Leah Block. I'm trying to find the right words to use because she didn't really fire back. She just basically said, "Oh, no, you didn't." Apparently, she was trying not to offend too many white viewers, I suppose. She seems to know that they expect her to take abuse with a smile, and she did. So if you're a white guy who has fantasies, ghetto gagger delusions of dehumanizing black women, then Rachel Lindsay and the black women who support her are tailor-made to order, and that is dangerous. It validates the idea that not only can a white man abuse black women, but that he is supposed to do it after all. They like it. Not just Rachel Lindsay, by the way. This is not just Rachel Lindsay who's being held up as an example of a black woman who likes a white man calling her nigger, but the black women who watch her too. And by extension, all black women. Do you think the pale males don't pay attention to what you comment online? They troll all over the place, even here, even on this channel. Demario Jackson has paid the price for his stupidity. No one is going to be wanting to walk in his footsteps because it's been made excruciatingly clear what happens if you try. So when does Rachel Lindsay get her slap to the face? From the looks of things, it's already happened twice, and I guess as long as she's not bounced from the show, as long as she still gets to be the one who the white guys are looking at adoringly, it's all good. Fine. Just keep in mind, the pale males are watching. The same pale males who led the charge, or rather helped put the pitchforks and torches in your hands to lead the charge against Demario Jackson, they're also the same pale males who have decided that Lee Garrett and Leah Block don't deserve that much media time. They're willing to help pave the way and, clear away any sort of controversy so that you can go back to indulging your fantasy of having white males looking at you and being the object of their attention. That's what it's really about. You're never going to be the object of their affection. But you can be the object of their attention, kind of like a stray poodle who walked into somebody's house. But this is not a harmless game that you're playing, constantly deflecting away from what the white media sanctions onto what the white media does not. That doesn't help matters. Having selective outrage, but only for sanctioned targets sanctioned by the dominant society, that is not a good thing. So I guess I said all of that just to say this. While you're busy on the still trying to find room on the bandwagon to bash Demario Jackson, just out of curiosity, are you ever going to jump onto the empty subway train that is not even bothering to run over Rachel Lindsay? Because there's plenty of room on that subway train, but don't seem to be too many passengers. I guess it's because she's not a sanctioned target. And considering how much harm this does to black women, how this puts black women particularly in the crosshairs, I have to wonder, why doesn't that bother you?